The prophet was still tied up. He opened his puffy and red eyes wide. Several wounds near his eyes were bleeding, as if he was crying out blood. Even Sophie, subconsciously, covered her mouth and nose with her hand, and held Elizabeth's hand with her other hand. Mitchell unconsciously looked at Ferrone. His eyes revealed his shock. He clenched his fists, but in the next moment, he noticed his misbehavior. He put his hands in his pockets, and sighed silently, as if he was disappointed by the fragility and mediocrity of the prophet. Being asked to recite the spell, the prophet closed his eyes and kept screaming.
Don't let me see them. Don't let them show themselves in front of me.
Anticipating the prophet's resistance, Albert chose the simplest and most direct way to force him to obey. The prophet let out a meaningless scream. His voice was so hoarse as he screamed for a long time, to the extent that others worried if his throat would be broken because of that or not.
I'll read it. Please don't ag.
Only then did Albert stop. The prophet intermittently recited the spell. After repeating it for a few times, he began to scream again. The scream was similar to the sound of a broken musical instrument, grating and displeasing. As time passed, he slowly became quiet. As he looked at the camera lifelessly, all the audience realized that the climax was coming. The prophet craned his head to look around. With stiff and slow movement, he again looked at the camera and slowly gave the audience an untimely smile.
The one who escaped has returned. The stage is complete. You still lack the key to the light, so I will see you bleeding and struggling in agony. Deceit, sorrow and hatred are hidden among you. All of your feelings and desires will be the best entertainment. I will be here to enjoy your performance.
The prophet hummed happily as he finished, like he was offering a prelude to the opening of an opera. Everyone were at a loss. Other guests were puzzled. The trio looked at Albert, who was frowning. He was also thinking about the meaning behind this. He doubted if the trio did anything, or his son caused this or not.
The next one, then.
Albert turned on the lights. Despite all the doubts in his head, he decided to end the ceremony politely and send his guests off. Albert and Ferrone brought their guests to the entrance of the mansion. He insisted on seeing the trio leaving. Before Sophie and the others left, they looked back and saw Albert taking Ferrone to the first floor.
That is, the true nature of the ceremony.
Yes.
Abel, he, had been like that for over a year.
Very likely, yes.
Oh my God, I've heard that from the innkeeper before, but...
Sophie went over and hugged Elizabeth.
It was scary, wasn't it? Stop thinking about it.
Elizabeth buried her head in Sophie's arms. Her low sobbing voice trembled whenever she pronounced any syllable.
Oh, Sophie, Sophie, oh my. We must get the man out of there. How could Fairsang do that to a person?
Yeah, what he has done, that is more than ridiculous, or any words can ever describe.
What will Ferrone think of that? What will he think of the fact that Abel had been like that? If Sophie, if you become like that, I will certainly go crazy.
We can still save him.
Yeah, I know, I'll concentrate, but...
I know, when you speak of it, when you understand everything, the fear of the unknown disappears.
It took a while for Elizabeth to calm down.
Ferrone replied.
The message you sent him during dinner?
Yes. I asked him about Abel's living habits and his original plan, things like that.
Come on, let's go find Michelle.
Mitchell had just finished his shower. The trio read Ferrone's message in Michael's room. Knowing that he was available for a phone call, they called him using Michael's phone, turning up the volume to maximum so that the girls could hear.
Hello, Ferrone. My name is Michelle Lever. Albert has talked with me about the ceremony until just now. I've just seen the message from Elizabeth, in which she introduced you and asked me a few questions.
What did he say to you?
He said that the ceremony had made a lot of money for the family, and how he had used the contracts to make money. That's all. He hasn't fully trusted me yet. We understand. Then what can you tell us? First, there is no way Abel could have died of cardiac arrest. He didn't smoke nor drink. He had a healthy diet. He was very healthy, without family history of disease.
I see. That's what we thought. If you say so, we can be sure that it was the ceremony that caused Abel's sudden death.
And then the ceremony. I don't know much about it. Tonight was the first time I've watched it. I've underestimated the importance of the ceremony. At the beginning, I thought that Albert was talking to people in the town every day until midnight. The people who came were all businessmen in the town. When I asked about it, he just said it was a business matter, so I wouldn't disturb them. That I usually stayed in my room during the ceremony, until one day I came home late and ran into Albert's guests, who asked why I never watched the ceremony. They mentioned Abel. I never knew there was a room for ceremony in my house. I went to basement. I found a door that I had never seen. At that time, I had the key to the study on the first floor. Thinking that I should give it a try, I used the study key to open it. However, I didn't expect that the study key could actually open the basement's door. I found Abel behind that door. At the time
Across the phone, all three of them felt Pharaoh's emotional turmoil.
I still can't believe it until now, the fact that Abel had been suffering under my house and I even had never been aware of it. I couldn't think of anything else but to take my clothes off, give them to Abel, and carry him out.
And that's how you took Abel out?
Because I don't know what else I could do. All I knew was that Abel needed to be saved and that I had to get Abel out of there. I was in such a panic that I startled Albert. I could only take Abel to the main door and tell him to run. I could still remember Abel's face, the dullness, the bewilderment. He was a very intelligent kid. Every time when I looked into his eyes, I felt that they were full of emotion and inspiration, but at that moment, he had already lost one eye and the other one was too puffy to open wide. He only came to his senses when I shouted at him, telling him to run. Being draped in my clothes, he ran away from that place with bare feet along the road. I'll never forget the look on his face. His emotions when he came to his senses and saw me. His face that was filled with shock and terror.
Silence filled the room as the trio were too stunned to speak a single word. Mixed emotions triggered by Pharaoh's words gagged them. Imagining that scene only, Elizabeth frowned and covered her mouth.
God.
And then you were sent away by Farsang.
Yes. He took my key to the study and threatened to shoot me if I didn't leave. I didn't know that this ceremony kills. I thought Abel was mentally disturbed by stress and was abused by Albert. I thought Abel would be fine. If I called the police as soon as possible, I thought I'd be able to call the police when I got out. I underestimated how far Albert would go. I had been watched outside the town. I couldn't contact anyone, nor go wherever I wanted to go. He even bribed people from my school, who were also Albert's guests. Luckily, my effort paid off. I was able to find someone who believed me and is willing to help.
You have a helper?
Yes, a hard-earned helper. He's now in another town nearby, Palos, and is always available to help.
We'll talk about the plan later. I still have a few things to ask.
Why don't I suspect Albert?
Yes. Abel and Alice, you should have been talking to each other frequently, so why didn't you two suspect anything?
At the beginning, Abel and I would eat together in my home. Abel's job was indeed to look after the collection in the house. Then Albert asked him to work in the workshop in the garage, and to stay there, for Abel's convenience. Then Albert told me not to disturb Abel as he was very busy with his work. Soon after that, I found a note written by Abel in my room. It said that he had to work in one of Albert's studios outside the town and that he should be very busy afterwards. The thing that impressed me most was that Albert managed to get Abel to send me voicemails occasionally saying he was doing well or something like that. I should have saved all those recordings. Looking back on it now, Abel's voice was so stiff. It felt like he was reading from a script. However, I explained to myself that it was because Abel was tired.
It's not your fault. Who would have imagined that he would go this far? Probably. He used the same trick to hide the truth from Alice.
Therefore, I won't trust him anymore. On the other hand, he doesn't trust me neither for sure. He gave me a key today. It looked like my key to the study, but I don't think that he would trust me and give me the real key.
The trio immediately recalled Sophie's divination.
We did a divination to predict what would happen in the ceremony. The results were keys, lies, clowns, beasts. Considering the revelation the prophet delivered, your key is a fake one.
Pharaoh giggled.
I knew it. Well, I'll figure out how to get the real key.
What did you originally intend to do when you came back?
Originally, I wanted to find Albert's criminal evidence and give all of them to Alice so that she could take him away, while I would get Abel away myself. I wanted to secretly record what he did, but now I want to steal all of his CDs.
Really? He is recording every ceremony?
Yes. CDs are in a padlocked big locker in the study on the first floor. I don't know the password of the padlock. Today he opened the locker with his back facing me and showed me what was inside, without showing me the password.
Now, then, we need evidence to stop Farsang and to save the Prophet. There are two pieces of evidence that can be taken away, the CDs and the Prophet himself.
To obtain these two pieces of evidence, we'll need the key to the study and then the password.
Could the key be in the bear's head? Beast.
We'll go and have a look tomorrow. If we don't have the key, we won't get any evidence.
What about the password?
Can we ask through the ceremony?
That's a padlock, am I right? What is the locker made of?
Iron.
Too bad that we can't break it.
I'll try to find the password tomorrow. If all goes well, I will put the CDs inside a bag and throw it outside in the back garden after the ceremony. Then, I will bring the Prophet with me. When these are done, I'll tell you so that you can collect the bag and take the first train the day after tomorrow. Then, you go find my friend in Palos. Alice should leave the town earlier. I will tell my friend about all these. I'll text you his number in a minute.
What about you?
I'll take care of it myself. Even if I get caught again, you need to take the CDs and leave Fozidon.
We can do these only after getting the key and the password. If not, these plans are useless.
We can only hope that everything goes well tomorrow. We'll tell Alice to go to the town nearby. We'll also get some anytime tickets.
Alright, I'll text you my friend's number. Oh yes. Is Abel buried in the cemetery?
Yes.
Okay.
What are you going to do?
Nothing.
Don't you ever think about it?
Pharaoh was silent.
You don't want Abel to die, just as Abel wouldn't want you to die.
Pharaoh remained silent.
He surely don't want you to die. Abel had.
Elizabeth hesitated. As she was thinking how she should put it into words, Pharaoh spoke.
I know, I should have known about many things, long ago. I know I missed a lot of things, but don't worry. I will make my compensation one by one later. Let's focus on the most important thing first. See you tomorrow.
Pharaoh hung up the phone. The next day, Elizabeth called early in the morning to book anytime train tickets, and then called Alice to tell her about their plan. I can leave today saying that I would talk to our supplier in Palos.
Great. When you arrive and meet Pharaoh's friend, can you please let us know?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm the one who should say that. Thank you all for everything. The trio packed their bags and were ready to go. Alice arrived in Palos at dinner time and met up with Pharaoh's friend. Before going to the Farsang mansion, Mitchell went to investigate more about the identity of the demon and the spell. On the other hand, Sophie tried several types of divination to see if she could find more useful information.
Does Farsang have a weakness? Can we use magic to knock him out?
Neither Mitchell nor I can't use that kind of magic.
Can you read his mind?
No. Every time I see him, I don't see any information.
That's too bad.
As Elizabeth sighed, Sophie once again threw her divination stone and tea leaves.
Time, darkness, blade, warrior, it doesn't make any sense.
What do you mean?
I want to get more information, so I'm using the same method to ask questions in different ways. I just asked, what will appear tonight? The blade and the warrior generally represent wounds and combat. Time, I don't understand it. Darkness represents something hidden, or lurking.
I can't say it is a positive result. What about the tea leaves?
The bigger the pile of tea leaves formed around a stone, the more serious or probable the event that the stone represents is.
Time. There are many leaves around.
I'll stop here. This method is too abstract and general. There could be several meanings behind each word.
Never mind. Let's get prepared for tonight's ceremony. We haven't slept well for days.
Go and rest first. I'm going to find Michelle.
I'm going with you then.
As for Mitchell, although he said that he started to understand something, he couldn't prove his theory, so no conclusion could be made. He hadn't heard anything from his friend as well. When it was about time, they went to the Farsang mansion. It had been snowing intermittently since yesterday. There was a thick layer of snow on the ground. Being covered by snow and freezing breeze, the trio arrived at the mansion. The guests tonight were the same 4 men as before. They arrived earlier and were chatting with Albert and Pharaoh. The trio approached them. After listening for a while, artworks in the main hall attracted Michael's eyeballs, tempting him into approaching those works. Noticing Michael's interest in his collection, Albert then introduced his collection to the guests.
10 years ago, the mayor gifted me this vase as an appreciation of my donation to the town's entrepreneur fund and my effort in supporting the local economy. Although it is not an antique, I particularly appreciate its modern style and the fine combination of blue and orange. A friend of mine made this bear head specimen and gave it to me. The fangs were real fangs taken from a bear.
As Albert was introducing his collection, Mitchell and Sophie followed the crowd. At the same time, Elizabeth hid herself behind the crowd, looking at the bear head carefully, but failed to find what she wanted.
Where is it?
While Albert was not looking at her, Elizabeth hurriedly touched the bear's mouth and chin, still nothing. Elizabeth knew that if she didn't find the key, Albert would notice her. Elizabeth believed Sophie. The key must be in the bear's head. But where is it exactly?
You seem to be very interested in that bear head, but please don't touch it, Ms. Sybeth.
All the guests looked at Elizabeth and saw her staring at the bear's head, with her nose almost touching the bear's nose. Elizabeth turned to Albert's direction once she heard his voice.
Haha. Sorry, it's really nice. It looks like alive that I got carried away. Don't worry, I didn't touch it.
Elizabeth stood up straight and opened her hands to prove her innocence. Albert laughed.
No problem. My friend is a professional taxidermist and I'm sure he'd be delighted to hear your appreciation.
Albert continued to introduce the rest of the collection. Elizabeth took the opportunity to walk up to Sophie and Mitchell. After introduction of several artworks, it was almost time for the ceremony. Everyone entered the multimedia hall. Ferrone had been following Albert for the whole time. The lights dimmed. Elizabeth held Sophie's hand. Sophie felt something warm in her palm. That was a key. Elizabeth withdrew her hand, handed the key to Mitchell to touch, and whispered to both of them.
It was in the ear. I would have been caught if I had acted a little bit slower.
As she finished, Elizabeth chuckled, making Sophie smile as well. Same process. The prophet was not different from yesterday except the fact that he would not struggle anymore. The prophet heard Albert's voice and dutifully recited the spell. The trio started to think about the question last night, waiting for a different answer. The prophet's voice became lower and lower while his pronunciation became more and more unclear. His words became moans, and eventually, meaningless screams. Suddenly, he fell silent. Looking at the screen, for no reason, the trio felt that there was something different in the prophet's eyes. It felt like the prophet was able to look at the people in the multimedia hall, seeing through the camera. He looked at the camera calmly. Suddenly, the trio felt like that the prophet was looking at the people standing in the middle of the hall, who were Albert and Ferrone. The prophet said this slowly.
Ferrone, I don't loathe you.